Hey guys, welcome to my first Unity tutorial. So I'm actually going to go back to the basics. So we'll go ahead and create a brand new Unity project. I'm just going to call it back to basics. And I'm going to show you guys how to use the new input system. So I'm just going to use the universal render pipeline. I'm not going to go into too much detail with what the difference is between these. That's for another video. So I'm going to give it a year to create the new project, and I will see you guys shortly. Okay, now that Unity has created our project, there's a few things I'm going to do. Firstly, I'm going to delete a load of stuff, mainly because that's my favorite thing to do. Cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new scene. So I'll just call this dev scene. And I'm going to go into it. And there we go. So let me first, let's just insert a cube and make sure I didn't break anything along the way. So cubes in the scene. I'm just going to align the camera with my current view so I can hopefully see the cube. There we go. Okay, so it's working, which is good. So let's go ahead and import our package. I'm going to go to Package Manager here. And for those of you interested, I am using that version. And what you want to do is, once it's finished fetching all the packages, is instead of having it in project, just click this little drop down and change it to all. And then in the search box over here, you want to go ahead and search for input system. So it's a little bit different to the older system. I'll go ahead and show you. So what you want to do is you want to click on it and then click install. And then you just want to wait for that to finish installing. Okay, so once it's finished installing the package, it's going to ask you if you want to restart the project. This is mainly because we're changing the whole input system, and we need to basically restart the project so it loads with the new input system. I never used to say this automatically. You used to have to go and do it manually. I'll show you both ways. So I'm going to say yes. It will restart Unity, but it'll fire it back up for us. We'll just let it do its thing. I will show you how to do it manually as well, just in case either that menu doesn't pop up or you ever wanted to change it back in the future. Okay, so now let's just wait for Unity to restart. Oh, can empty my recycle bin when I'm here. Okay, so now my Unity is restarted. So what you want to do it manually is you want to go to File, Build Settings, and then Player Settings. So this is where it stores the current input system that's being used. So under Player and under Other Settings, about halfway down, maybe 3/4 of the way, you'll see Active Input Handling. So here you can change it back to the old or the new, or have both. I'm just going to leave it on new for now. Obviously changing that, if you change it back to old or both, it'll need to restart. Okay, so now that the package is installed, let's go ahead and create our script. So I'm just going to call it player controller, like so. So to open a C# script, you can either, needs to load, you can either double click it here, or if you go to Assets and Open C# project. Both ways work. It's probably just a lot easier to double click on the script, but we'll ignore that for now. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and open up the script that we made. And what we're basically going to do is we're just going to get rid of the stuff inside. And we'll just create a private void jump. And then inside here, we're just going to debug.log. For those of you who don't know what that is, it'll basically just log a message to the console so we can see something happening. In our case, we're just going to say I'm jumping. Nice and simple. So when we call this function, it'll just log a nice little message. So now we want to use the new input system to call this function. So I'm going to start off basic and I'll show you the buttons, and then we'll go into the axes such as forward, back, left, right, and the mouse itself. Okay, so starting off with the basics then. The biggest change is instead of it being in project settings, whether you're like me, if you came back to this after a while, you clicked on it, input manager, and you see the little question mark or exclamation mark or whatever it was saying maybe you should try the new input system. So instead of it being in here now, where it's just a huge list and everything's just combined, and you just have to listen every single frame, whether the button's been pressed or not, instead we just create a function that gets called every single time you press the button. It's a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and to be honest, I've been using it for a little while now, and it's grown on me. So I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call it input, because the way it's separated out now, it's kind of like a programmable object. So if you create, and then somewhere near the bottom, you'll see input actions. I'm going to create a new input action. We're going to call this player input actions. So this object here will hold our player's input actions, if the name did give it away. So if you double click it, it'll open it up. First thing you'll see is it is completely empty, and we need to start by adding some action maps. So this is what I mean by it's a lot cleaner. You can kind of separate everything out. So we can create a new action map for movement, which will include the moving around and looking around. And we can create a new one for actions, so such as jumping or holding a button to open a door, for example. Okay, so we'll go with actions for now, and I'll show you guys how to use this. So inside your maps, you can create an action. So we're going to call this jump. And then inside your actions, you can create a binding. And this is where you actually bind it to a key. So we're going to combine this to space. Nice and easy. So now we need to actually add an interaction. Otherwise, it's not going to be listening out for anything. So we want to tell it to listen out for a press. By default, it'll default to press only. But if you wanted it to trigger when you release it, or on both. So we're going to go for press. So what it basically is when this condition's met. So when, in this example, when I press the space button, this action will fire. It'll be triggered. So we can actually include multiple bindings. So we can also bind it to, say, for example, on a gamepad, we want when they press up on the D-pad, we'll also add the event for just the press. So when they press up on the D-pad, jump will be called. If I press space, jump will be called. So see how you can kind of target multiple different controllers just through here. So when you're done, make sure you click Save Asset, or you can tick the autosave, and every time you make a change, it'll save. Don't know why I just explained autosave. But I'm not going to do that, mainly because I tell it to generate a C# class every time. This is mainly because I want to use it inside my C# scripts. So if you just click on it in the project view, and then inside the inspector, just give it a little tick. I usually don't change the defaults, but if you wanted to change the class name and namespace, this is the place you do it. Just click apply, and what you'll see is it'll create a little C# script. This is generated, so do not go in and edit it. Well, it even says generated. But every time I go ahead and make a change in here, it'll make a change to the C# script. So what you'll notice is every time I click Save Asset, it'll take a little bit longer to load, which is why I don't tick the autosave, because it gets really annoying. Okay, so now it's an actual C# class. You'll see inside our player controller. Oh, don't know why it's open in another Visual Studio. I'll just close that once it opens. That can go away. I'll just leave this one. Okay, so sure. Okay, so inside our script, because it's an actual C# object, player input actions, we can actually reference it in our script now. So I'd say player input actions, there it is, and then we'll give it a name. So just to keep it separate, I'm going to use obj as just let me know it's an object, and I'm just going to call it player input actions. Nice and simple. We're also going to go ahead and make use of the awake. And what we're going to do inside here is basically just give it a value. So we'll say we're just going to create a new instance of itself. So now it's not equal to null, it's actually equal to a new input action. Okay, so if you go ahead and have a look what options we get from this, you'll see we actually have access to, let me just open it up quick, let that finish thinking. Actually have access to the action maps. So for example, dot actions, which is the one we created here. And then inside that, we also have dot jump. And then with this object that is generated for us, there is actually an event that fires called performed, which, as you can probably guess, it's when it's triggered. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of this event. We're not going to change the event. We're just going to add to it. So we need to give the context a name. So I'm just going to call it X. And then I want it to just call jump. I've got these two the wrong way around. That's not how you name a context. Okay. So straight off the bat, this isn't going to work. I'll just let that finish thinking. I'm not going to show you it not working. That makes no sense. What we need to do is we actually need to enable the player input actions. We need to enable it to basically let it know, hey, listen out for my inputs type thing. Otherwise, no events are going to fire. You'll also use this way to disable it. So say if you wanted to switch it off and you didn't want it to fire any more events, so say when the game is paused, we can switch this off. So it's not even listening out for the inputs. It's as if somebody's disconnected the keyboard, as an example. So the way to do this is you can actually just do... so what I usually do is I actually make use of the functions on enable and on disable, just as a general rule of thumb. So we can basically just tell it to enable here. So now it's just going to work. But like I said, I like to make use of the on enable and on disable. So when the script is enabled, which it is by default, we will listen out for the controls. Otherwise, if it's disabled, so whether we do it programmatically or in the inspector, we can disable. So when the script is disabled, it's not going to listen out and none of these events are going to fire. Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and tidy that up. So I'm just going to call a region just to make it a little bit neater so we don't have to take up that much real estate. Just like so. We'll go ahead and hide that inside the region so we can continue with our bits up here. Okay, so now we have our script. I'm just going to go ahead and put our script on our camera. So player controller can just pop in there. Now if I hit space play. Now if I hit space, you see it's fired our event. Nice and simple. And so you'll see if I go into player input actions, go back to jump, if I change the space to press and release, so it'll fire performed when I press it or when I release it. So we should be able to see two debug messages. Yep, there we go. So that's how buttons work. It's quite simple. There is a little bug. Well, it's not so much a bug, but I'll have a video up later to show you how to fix it, and I'll show you the bug in a minute. Okay, so that's nice and simple. That's just pressing buttons. So in the next video, I'm actually going to show you guys how to use the keyboard and the mouse to move around. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.